Well, good afternoon, Maverick traders. It's currency recap time. Joe with you here. It's the 13th of March. It's Thursday. Let's get into the recap. I'm going to take a look at some of the stuff that happened today. More of the same, actually. Some technical analysis. And if I've got some pairs to trade, we'll talk about those as well.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
Moving into the market analysis, let's take a look at what happened. Well, first off, more of the same, I should say. U.S. markets continue lower with continued uncertainty on tariffs, worries about growth. We did get a couple of decent economic numbers, which I do believe actually pushed the dollar up a little bit. So the PPI was lower, CPI was lower as well yesterday, but unemployment claims were light. So we're getting kind of that soft landing in spite of everything that's going on. Some of these economic numbers are showing a soft landing that the Fed is looking at, or kind of was expecting to see. And I just think that actually just kind of stabilized the dollar. It really didn't send it up to the roof or anything. But in light of what's going on policy-wise, I don't think we're going to be out of the woods just yet. So we should expect more of the same. How do we finish overall? Well, looks like the risk-off currencies did pretty good. Risk-ons dropped. We did have somewhat of the opposite move here, at least on the currency, at least on the equity side of things with the bounce. But boy, it didn't even take a day. It rolled right back over and started sliding. And that had a lot to do with more policy talk and tariff worries. So the yen up, the US dollar up slightly, 0.27%. You'll see that it really didn't change the chart much. Franc in line, euro flat, and the pound flat. And CAD slipped a little bit. I know the push and pull between the Canadian dollar and the U.S. dollar should be the most tumultuous based on the tariff conversations. However, the Bank of Canada did come out and actually cut interest rates, but as expected, we'll get there in a second. But it's been hanging in there pretty strong. The Aussie and the Kiwi a little lower. Moving on to the overall markets, another pretty decent drop, 1.39% on the S&P World Index, down over 1% as well. Crypto was probably the biggest losers. Today we'll take a look at those individually. Gold had a nice little bounce. Always gold, kind of a reaction to a little bit of fear and worry, and oil slid a little bit more. Moving into the cryptos, you're going to see that Bitcoin Cash down 7.8%. Boy, they're all down quite a bit there. So a nice rollover pretty much on all the cryptos. On a technical level, none of them have really broken down yet, but we'll take a look at the charts and see where they lie. So where does that put us? Well, it's going to be a -3, and this was pretty easy for us to do. Well, for me to do. We were actually looking for some sort of an oversold bounce. Let's jump into the chart, and I was expecting something to maybe turn. This chart's out a little bit further than usual, and the reason being is because we had a discussion of, well, sometimes you get these really hard pushes and you get a push back. And I think I was talking with my equity class yesterday that this might even be a little bit of a consolidation range. We're looking for capitulation volume, something that's going to be substantially higher. I even went into the volatility index, but this is a pretty steady, strong, specific in direction move today. Not a lot of volume behind it. So I do think there is probably more to the downside here, which was why I moved this down to a -3. It feels a little bit extended. I would expect some sort of an oversold bounce. I expected that actually a couple of days ago, and guess what? We didn't get it. So we just continued to trade the markets in front of us. That's on the equity side, but the U.S. equities do seem to have a little bit of impact. What I mean by that, I'm seeing a lot of consolidation. We'll talk about that here in a second. Here is our economic news for the week so far. Here's the Bank of Canada rate statement, expected to drop 25 basis points. They did. Press conference comes out and says, yeah, with increased worries with the United States, they're going to be a little bit more hawkish than most, but the Canadian dollar didn't really seem to do much. It went down a little bit, recovered, and is kind of flattening out. Today in the U.S., we saw the PPI number. It dropped a little lower as well, but understand that we did have a CPI that dropped. So we're seeing inflation go in the correct direction, at least what the Fed wanted. Unemployment claims, take a look at this, 226K expected, and it was actually lighter than that. That number is going to be a little bit foggy to follow, but based on the economic numbers, I would expect the dollar to actually maybe stabilize for a little bit, but there's more to it than just that, isn't it? So let's just jump straight into our currency analysis and kind of take a look at how things ended today. As always, folks, let's start with the yen here. This was up 0.7, 0.69 is where it's at right about now, but you can see the velocity here, a big move, a little bit of a slide to the downside and then up, and this is the last couple of days. I've got a meandering RSI. It's a little bit above that 50 there, but it seems to kind of waffle back and forth. A moving average that has kind of bent back and forth and a flip-flopping SAR. So the range has increased on the yen. Actually, the range has increased on quite a bit of these currencies, but it's kind of not going anywhere. That's pretty much what I saw with most currencies today. So let's just jump into the dollar. You can see the dollar's a little bit tighter. Well, let me zoom in this chart a little bit. But you can see some consolidation, right? Flatlining here, a little bit above the 50 here on the RSI, but a flat moving average, flip-flopping SARs in a pretty tight range. It's really not giving me much. It seems like the dollar's almost kind of tired of sitting there and trying to guess what policies are going to change and tariffs are going to be implemented or threatened back and forth. So a little bit more of a consolidation move here on the dollar. Moving to the franc, you're going to see that it actually had a pretty good move to the upside over the last few days, but then I was almost going to give this a -1, folks, and if you'd like to, I think you can. I do like the descending triangle kind of action here. I like the floor that it's set, so I would lean towards the bear side. And the reason why I kept it as 0 is because this RSI isn't showing any sort of momentum gain. And instead of this moving average falling apart, it looks like it's kind of flatlining. When you get shadows like this, I wouldn't be surprised to see a move higher and lower. It might just increase its range, but this is what to keep an eye on because I could slide it from a 0 to a -1, at least on my outlook. Jumping into the euro and the pound, they're still holding in there pretty good. I like these bases that they're at. They put themselves up higher. We do have a flip in the SAR here on the euro. It does look like it's getting a little bit weak, especially with the RSI, but it's above 50 still. We'll see what it does when it comes to this area of support. I'm not excited to jump into this bearish, but it is kind of trying to create its own sideways. Here's another currency that's showing a little bit of sideways. So I went ahead and just put it as a 0. Well, actually, you know what? I didn't. I actually kept this a little stronger. I think I kept the euro and the pound kind of at a +1, and because it's more of a high base area. Now, if this starts to threaten this support level that I drew, let's get this line back up and start to roll over, and we see this RSI go below there, then yeah, I could get that moving average to turn. Then I might be a little bit glass half empty. But for now, I like the +1. Pound as well as a +1. This chart seems a little bit more clear cut. You see the euro was actually sliding lower where the pound is actually pushing higher. So this one was a lot easier for me to call it a +1. I guess you could call it a +2. The SAR did flip. I like the moving average, and the RSI is actually above 50, just moving sideways. So I kept it as a +1, but it is definitely the strongest between the euro and the pound right now, and I do like that chart. Moving over to the CAD, you can see the CAD, they cut interest rates, and so it was pretty interesting to see that actually it hung in there. I believe it's through one of these days here. Let me get my cursor out to see when it was, because it was yesterday, right? The 12th? Yeah, right through here is where they had their interest rate change. And it just slid a little bit today, but it hung in there, even in light of being interest rate cut. So we'll see how that pans out. Anything can happen. I decided to just kind of keep this flat. I don't think it's really falling apart. I do like the move that it had back here to flip the SAR. And you can see that this RSI actually climbed above 50 for a second there. So the moving average is kind of flattening. The SAR did flip, but it's still below 50 here on the RSI. So I just kept it as, guess what, folks, a 0. So let's go to our risk on currencies. Aussie also pulling back from a little bit of a blip there, flattening RSI, flattening moving average, flip-flop SAR. The Kiwi as well, a little wider of a range. And, it's pretty interesting to see how wide these go, but it is sideways. It's completely sideways. So I'm seeing a lot of consolidation on almost all the currencies all at once. It makes it super difficult to kind of pair them against each other. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. Since we're here, let's get to our cryptocurrencies. Let's start with Bitcoin. And big drops in all of these. 3%, 7%, 5%. However, they're not really doing anything. I've got Bitcoin here. I think it's kind of a zero move. The others I gave a little bit more negative, and the reason being is because the others are threatening more of these lower levels. This is on its way. The RSI looks weak, flattening moving average, but yeah, I'll keep it at a zero for now because it's weird to say, but it's one of the stronger ones out there. Let's go to Bitcoin Cash, and what I liked about Bitcoin Cash is it's already starting to slip. So even though it doesn't look like it's really falling apart, I like the price action. So sloping moving average, we got the start of flip. The RSI is kind of flattening below 50. So nice. This could break down and slide a little lower, kind of a target here in the shorter term. So it was easy for me to keep that at a -1. And the others as well. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Same idea. Hasn't broke yet, but downward moving average. The SAR's below it, but it is kind of consolidating on this lower level. See if that can't roll over. And then Litecoin, pretty much the exact same thing. The reaction on these are very, very difficult to gauge. They move very quickly and they move a lot. But that's kind of where we're sitting. Well, at least for today. So here's the velocity score. Everything's kind of crammed itself back into the middle. And this does not help much when it comes to me wanting to pair some trades together. We'll see if that can stretch itself out or change in the next few days. But it's very news driven and it's very reactionary. So when it came to some possible trades, I wasn't sure exactly how to approach this with you guys. So I figured I'd go through a few. And I'll go through kind of the risk on and risk off trades and just show you that everything's kind of flat. So I like the stability of the euro. And I know that the Kiwi and the Aussie dollar have both slipped a little bit, but you can see it's not doing much. Here's the Euro Kiwi. It's just kind of high tight. It's flattening up there. Let's take a look at the Euro Aussie. Kind of doing the same thing, not really giving me too much to go off of when it comes to placing a new trade here. I also decided maybe it'd be cool to take a look at just straight on risk off versus risk on. So here's the Aussie US. A little bit of a consolidation. It might look like it could roll over, but the US just isn't that strong. I mean, I know that the Aussie and the Kiwi are pretty weak, but I don't believe that the US is going to get strong enough to maybe confirm this, but it might. It's on my watch list, but it's not a trade I'm too interested in yet. Let's take a look at the other one. This is the Kiwi US. Just not a lot of confirmation in any of these. They're mostly moving sideways. Some look like they could move higher or lower. You guys are probably coming to that same conclusion as you go through the pairings. So not the best day to trade. That's pretty much what I'd give for today. And as always, folks, I mean, we don't have to trade every day, right? So uncertainty continues with the U.S. tariffs. We're also seeing all sorts of different things back and forth with other countries. Bank of Canada actually cut their rates, but in line with expectations. We're seeing some economic news out of the U.S. that's showing some good signs of lower inflation, but we do have we do have that gigantic gorilla in the room, which is the tariff changes and the policy worries that I don't think they're going to go anytime soon. I know it's almost a broken record, but take a look at where we're at. Everything kind of came to the center here. It's just one day. We don't trade every day. Maybe 1 or 2 days from now, we'll get a little bit more diversity, but reactionary trading, it's going to continue. I've kept this up here for almost a couple of weeks now, so make sure you play relative strength and weakness, and proper position sizing is always important. You don't have to trade if you don't like it. All right, folks, we'll talk to you next time. See ya.